Hi friend, my name is Marcus Lapp. I am a former stutter speech coach and I'm the founder here at speakyourmindmethod.com. So how is it that the wonderful people that I get to work with in my speech coaching practice, how is it that they can go from struggling mightily when making phone calls, important phone calls at work, to then making these phone calls with incredible ease and confidence? How is it that someone who was once weighed down by stuttering now literally hears his family telling him, wow, you're talking so much better? Or even me, how is it that today I could walk into a bar or a cafe completely at ease when just a few years ago, that exact same situation would have turned on that anxiety, it would have turned on that tightness in my throat, which of course led to a lot of stuttering. So the question is this: how is this possible? What is the mechanism by which we are able to change our habits, to change our trajectory from stuttering to fluency? How does that happen? Well, let's find out. The answer lies in a hidden fundamental force that is largely responsible for your ability to overcome stuttering, and it is called neuroplasticity. Now, the point of this video is not to drown you in the technical details of what neuroplasticity is. That would take hours, if not days. And instead, what I want to do is to narrow your focus down to just five truths about neuroplasticity, specifically for those of us who struggle with stuttering. And it's when you understand these essential truths about neuroplasticity that you start to understand and believe that, oh wait, this is possible. This is science. This is real. So let's get into it. So 5 truths on neuroplasticity. Truth number 1 is neuroplasticity is not a new friend. You've known her for years. Here's a quick definition. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page as to what neuroplasticity is. What is a neuroplastic brain? Well, that is a plastic, flexible brain as opposed to a hardwired brain. Your brain is a lot like soft Play-Doh. Play-Doh that we used to play with as kids. It's a lot more like Play-Doh than it is, say, concrete. That's just rigid and hard, and you can't really mold it into anything. So to put a bow on this defining neuroplasticity and what it means, you could say that neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to change in response to a new thought, a new experience, or a new perception. Okay? Now, what's important for you to understand is that the waters of neuroplasticity, they run way deeper than you think. That's why this truth is titled, neuroplasticity is not a new friend. You're not bringing in this new power that you're not familiar with. No, you know exactly what neuroplasticity feels like. And I'll give you a few examples of neuroplasticity at work. One example, learning a new language. This includes, by the way, your first language when you were very young. You needed neuroplasticity to be able to respond to the environment, respond to the language, the words that the people around you were saying, and use those experiences to change your brain, to rewire your brain. That's neuroplasticity. You could not have learned language as a kid if you did not have a neuroplastic brain. A couple more examples. Anytime you learn a new sport, a new activity, whether you're a kid or an adult, whether it's basketball, learning how to ride a bike, whether it is learning how to play the piano or guitar, whether it's learning how to play pickleball, doesn't matter. You need neuroplasticity if you are going to actually make any progress in it. Getting better, that feeling of improving in a skill, that is what neuroplasticity feels like. That is what the experience is. And you know exactly what that feels like. You know exactly what it feels like to walk into a new job on the first day, and then to feel very much of that imposter syndrome and not be very good at that job, but then to get better over time. That's neuroplasticity. That would not happen if you did not have a neuroplastic brain. Okay? And this even goes all the way down to simple thoughts. Every time you think a new thought, it rewires your brain ever so slightly. Every time you read a new book, or you listen to a podcast, or you watch a YouTube video, anything that is new slightly rewires your brain. None of these activities I just mentioned would be even remotely possible if you did not have a neuroplastic brain. So that's what I really want to drive home here at the beginning, is that this is not some foreign alien substance that you have to go search out in the canyons of your brain. No, you know exactly what neuroplasticity feels like. You know exactly what it feels like to change, to adapt to cultures, to adapt to your environment. Now, to be fair, there are many, many skills and behaviors that we learn that require much less neuroplastic energy than learning to rise above stuttering and build fluency. I'm not suggesting that it's just as easy to overcome stuttering as it is to learn how to play volleyball. Of course not. But what I am saying is that it is unquestionably true that you have this fundamental ability to rewire your brain, to change your experience that profoundly affects your everyday life. And as we just mentioned, that energy has been present for your entire life. You've already felt it. And what we just need to do is direct that energy, direct that neuroplastic energy into your speech and use it to transform your speech habits. So there you go. That's truth number one. Neuroplasticity, it's not a new friend. You've known her for years. Now, truth number two is unlearning is the real challenge, not learning. What do I mean by this? Well, evolutionarily speaking, the brain is built to preserve past habits and experiences. And the reason the brain operates this way makes a lot of sense if you just think of it evolutionarily. So what was the value to our primitive ancestors of really preserving memories and preserving habits and experiences? Well, if you realize that a certain plant is poisonous or a certain animal is dangerous, you want to remember that. And when you do remember that, your chances of surviving are greater because you will then remember and avoid those things that might otherwise kill you. So because of that bias in human nature, that tendency to preserve old habits, old memories, one of the downstream effects of that is that when you have a stuttering habit for years and years, your brain is very reluctant to prune it away. It's not going to go away easily. And this is why we experience it as being so difficult to overwrite that stuttering program with the fluency program. It's this tendency of the brain to preserve and to be conservative about these past habits. And this is why almost everyone who goes through this journey will have these experiences where you start to improve, you commit yourself, you're very diligent, you're focused, you're doing the work, and you start to make these strides. But then all of a sudden, you end up, for no apparent reason, in a certain conversation, you're snapped back into the same old stuttering mode that you feel like you're once again trapped and you don't know how to escape from it. This is in large part due to the imbalance and the disparity between learning a new skill and unlearning an old skill. And it's simply just much easier to learn a new skill than it is to unlearn. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is not to discourage you, and actually quite the contrary. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand the reason behind why sometimes you snap back into that old stuttering mode. If you've ever gotten annoyed or confused or just kind of bewildered about why does your brain do that? Why does it snap back into that old mode as soon as there's a little bit of pressure again? Or maybe as soon as you're a little bit sleep deprived, it snaps back. When you understand these things, you can be a little bit more patient with yourself because you realize, oh, this is from a tendency of the brain that's been around for thousands of years. That's a part of my evolutionary history. There's this bias in the brain that prefers to preserve memories and old habits because it helped us survive. And of course, anything like that, it's amoral. It doesn't really care what's right or wrong. A tendency like that in human nature, it's just helped us survive. And it does us a lot of good, but then in certain cases, like in stuttering, when we really just want to move on from that habit, it's very resistant. The brain is very resistant to do so. But now you understand why that is. Now, instead of beating yourself up for having a broken brain or for your brain just, or for you just, or to think of yourself as just, oh man, I'm just weak and stupid and I can't, like, why is this so hard? Why can't I do this? Like, no, your brain's not broken. You're fine. You just have to understand and be a little patient with yourself. And like the truth is, I really do believe this. A lot of people, when they start to go down this path of trying to build fluency and overcome their stutter, a lot of people give up. But they don't give up because it's too hard, in my view. They often give up because things don't make sense. When things start to not make sense, that's another part of human nature, we just kind of check out. We need explanations. We need stories to validate the pain that we're going through or the effort that we are putting into something. If we don't have any kind of explanation or story to tell ourselves, then we are just so much more likely to tap out. And so I want you to understand why these things happen so that you're not surprised by this truth that unlearning stuttering, it is really difficult. It's a hard thing to do. It's very doable. It's very possible. You can do it, but it's going to be tough. There are going to be a lot of obstacles for you to get over during this process. But it's when you can start to understand things, when you can make sense of the difficulty and make sense of the pain. That's when you can work with your brain and you can stick through those difficult valleys. And then over time, you start to grow and you start to reach higher and higher levels of mastery with your fluency. So that's truth number 2. It's a part of human nature that unlearning is simply much more difficult than just learning, in this case, fluency. Truth number 3, neuroplasticity has a dark side. What do I mean by this? Well, ironically, people strengthen their stutter in childhood or adulthood also because of neuroplasticity. Now, you might think, okay, I thought neuroplasticity was this amazing, great thing that's going to help me overcome my stutter. So you're telling me that it's also the reason or one of the big reasons why my stutter became strong in the first place? There's some irony here, but yeah, that's actually true. And Norman Doidge calls this the plastic paradox, this idea that neuroplasticity doesn't always work in our favor. And the paradox comes in when the plastic brain is very good at creating new pathways for allowing new behaviors to develop. But what it is also very good at is strengthening those behaviors. So you could say neuroplasticity is really good at making new grooves, but it's also really good at deepening those grooves. And there's a neurologist called Alvaro Pascal Leon who has this really good metaphor for how neuroplasticity works, especially this dark side of neuroplasticity. And the way he illustrates this, the metaphor he uses is, think of neuroplasticity like pliable snow on a hill that you bring your sled up, and when it's your first time going down the hill, it's just this wide open space of snow. You can go any which way you want to. So you pick a random path, you make a new path. But then what can easily happen is if you go back up and you go on the same path a couple more times, now you've got some tracks in place. And then what starts to happen is if you start anywhere close to that, where those tracks are that are now created, you are very likely to just stay on that track for all the subsequent rides that you take down that hill. So there's this dark side of rigidity that can very much be present within neuroplasticity as well. And this is just really useful for you to know, because this helps explain things. This helps turn down the confusion that we sometimes feel. And so, yeah, it's a bit ironic, right? But it is true that the cure for stuttering is the same thing as that which once empowered it. We just need to redirect it in the direction that we want to. We need to create a new path of fluency, which we will also bring that sled up to the top of the hill and keep staying on those tracks to make that really, really strong. Because you're also not going to make your fluency habit super strong without neuroplasticity. So just like many things in life, just like the human psyche, there is a dark side to almost everything. And neuroplasticity is no different. So that's truth number 3. Neuroplasticity, it's got a little dark side. Now, truth number 4 is exertion supercharges neuroplasticity, passivity kills it. What do I mean by this? Well, let's talk about the law of exertion, what I call the law of exertion. And my definition of this law is the energy applied to changing a habit must be greater than the energy that maintains it. Let me repeat that one more time. The energy applied to changing a habit must be greater than the energy that maintains it. So what this means is if you don't exert yourself with more energy than what the stuttering habit already has that maintains that stuttering habit, that energy, if your exertion, your energy does not surpass that, then you are not going to experience grand scale neuroplastic change with your speech. You could say that plasticity flourishes at the edge of discomfort. If you are in some kind of plan or routine that is really easy and that doesn't take much time and that you don't really feel much resistance, it's really easy to do, there's not really much challenge involved, that's not a good plan. That's a terrible sign. Because, again, this law of exertion, you need to have more of an energy force than the energy that is sustaining your stuttering habit. And it takes exertion. It takes that feeling of discomfort. And a couple examples of exertion, let's kind of move beyond just the speech realm. So we all know this. And I think one of the best examples of this is learning a new language and how much neuroplastic change occurs between two. Let's take two people. One person practices Duolingo for 3 minutes every day, and the other person practices maybe Duolingo or just practices the new language they're learning for 2 hours a day, really engaged in the zone, really working hard to remember all the different nuances within that language. That is a very different feeling. And you know what I'm talking about. You feel that exertion. You feel very kind of tired when you get to the end of that practice time when it's 2 hours. Your brain feels a little bit wiped out, like it needs a break. But if you only practice Duolingo for 3 minutes, that is so little exertion. And the outcome of that is you're not going to get much neuroplasticity happening. You're not going to get, it's going to take a really long time to even get the most basic improvement in that language. So now let's bring this back to speech. What does exertion feel like when you're within a speech program or working on a speech plan? Well, one example is really focusing on exaggerating the tools or the techniques that you're practicing. So an example of this is one of the tools that I teach is called over-articulation. And so this is just a skill that you learn, and it really helps people. It really helped me. You learn to practice by really exaggerating and speaking like this. So if you're reading aloud, then you're just reading off the page like this, and it looks really weird and it sounds really weird, but it's really valuable. Not only because it turns up the volume of that particular skill, so you're really exaggerating it, which forces you to really feel that in a more potent way than if you were doing it more subtly. But what it also does is it puts you again at that edge of discomfort. Your brain is going to resist a little bit because it feels weird, it feels novel. It's like, we don't talk like that. Why are we doing this? That's what your brain is going to question you. It's going to be like, why are you doing this? You're going to feel that resistance. And that resistance is a really good sign, because that means your current, the status quo is resisting this new thing you're practicing. And that's exactly what we need to have happen. So a couple other examples of exertion in your speech is pushing yourself to actually put in 45 minutes to an hour a day instead of 5 minutes here or 10 minutes there. There's such a stark contrast between the exertion that is required to work for 5 minutes and to just read aloud for 5 minutes versus a whole 45-minute, an hour-long routine. It's a completely different experience. Neuroplasticity is going to always favor the plan that includes more exertion, more discomfort, more challenge. Okay? And another thing to look out for here is when you are inside of a speech program, you're doing your daily routine or whatever it might be, pay attention to whenever something becomes mindless, when you realize that you're really not paying attention to it anymore and you're just coasting through it. As soon as that starts to happen with any given exercise, you want to pause, you want to stop and try something else, or try to practice it in a different way, maybe exaggerate it even more so that you no longer feel that you're coasting through it without paying attention. Because when you aren't paying attention, when you're just coasting through it, when you're just distracted in your practice time of any skill, you're not making growth. You might say that distraction is the death of neuroplasticity, and attention is the life of neuroplasticity. So as soon as you feel like you're being distracted or that there's no exertion involved anymore, that's a red flag. And you want to just do something, even experiment with a couple of different things. Maybe move the routine around a little bit or try something new. Or as I said, really exaggerate it. Do whatever you have to do to get out of that mode of mindlessly doing the practice. Okay? Just something to keep in mind. So there you go. That's truth number 4. Finally, let's get to truth number 5. Real quick before we get to this final truth, I want to give you a quick heads up and let you know about my Stop Stuttering workshop. This is a free 1 hour long, in-depth video training that's 100% free. It walks you through a daily routine, a step-by-step plan. It helps you understand the ins and outs of stuttering. It helps you make sense of it. And then it also gives you a plan, as I said, a daily routine. It's all there inside of the Stop Stuttering workshop. I'll leave a link in the description below, so be sure to go check that out. Okay, let's bring this back to truth number 5 here, which is neuroplasticity breaks down borders. So let me ask you a question. What would you say is the best potential outcome for your speech from this process of neuroplasticity? What is the tippy top of your potential? Now, it's an impossible question to answer definitively because nobody knows. You can't know the true peak of your potential. It's impossible. But I think it's an important question to ask nonetheless. Now, what I can pretty much guarantee is that the mental borders you've constructed for what your potential is for your fluency in the future, I can pretty much guarantee you that you have a very conservative estimate, that the mental borders that you've placed are laughably off. I can almost guarantee that you are underestimating the power of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity breaks down borders. It opens up new worlds. It gives you this amazing opportunity to transform things about you that have this profound impact on your experience of everyday life. Now, another thing that neuroplasticity does is it exposes those mental borders or those mental walls that you have either consciously or unconsciously placed there. It exposes them as made not of concrete, but of moldable clay. You realize that stuttering when ordering food is just a pattern that's made of soft clay, and that you can mold it and shape it into something else, such as fluency when you order food. Same goes for talking on the phone, or saying your name, or introducing yourself to people. Those mental borders that are there, they're an illusion. It's what you have is this soft clay in your hands. You have a neuroplastic brain that is moldable, bendable, able to be reconfigured in the direction that you want, and that you can exert yourself and use energy to direct it away from the habit you don't want, stuttering, to the habit you do want, fluency. I don't know what the maximum range of your potential is for fluency. I simply don't. I don't know how good you would be at your very, very, very best when it comes to fluency. But what I am completely certain of is that even if you were to get remotely close to that highest potential, you would be absolutely thrilled with the outcome. You would be thrilled with the freedom that you now have with your speech. I am certain of that. So, my friend, those are the 5 truths about neuroplasticity that I wanted to share with you today. If you want to dive deeper, then go dive into my Stop Stuttering workshop. Link is in the description. It's 100% free. As I mentioned, it's an hour long. It's actually a little over an hour long. It gives you so much good stuff to chew on. It gives you a plan, a daily routine, walks you through a lot of knowledge and basic understanding of what stuttering is and what to do about it, and what the process actually looks like, what it feels like. You get that for free with my Stop Stuttering workshop. It's basically a full-on course for free, a full-on hour-plus class that you can go watch right now. Link is in the description below. So that's all for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.